Can I tell you something? The last 5 minutes of your yoga class might be just as crucial as the first five. How you close the experience, how you guide your students through the transition back to their daily lives, and how you leave them with a lasting impression can determine whether they feel complete, connected, and eager to return. So, if you want good numbers of class retention, returning students, and you want to become almost everyone's favorite yoga teacher, you need to focus on sticking the landing and offering a fantastic end to your class. I'm Sage Roundtree, and this is Yoga Teacher Confidential: Secrets of Becoming a Great Yoga Teacher. In the previous episode, we talked about opening your class effectively. Today, we're exploring the other bookend: how to create a powerful, meaningful closing that serves your students and establishes you as almost everyone's favorite teacher. Think about your favorite books or movies. A weak ending can undermine even the most brilliant beginning and middle. The same is true for yoga classes. Your students might forget specific poses or specific sequences, but they will remember how they felt at the end of your class. The last few minutes of class are like the recovery period in the stress-rest balance of adaptation. And that's something I value so much, I wrote a whole book about it called The Athlete's Guide to Recovery. The closing minutes of class are when integration happens, when the body processes the work it's just done, when the mind absorbs insights that arose during practice, and when your students prepare to carry whatever benefits they've received back out into their daily lives. When it's done well, your class closing accomplishes several important things. It provides a sense of completion and resolution. It helps students transition from the focused internal state, pratyahara, of practice to everyday awareness. It reinforces key themes or intentions from the class. And it creates a final impression that lingers after students leave. When you end your class well, your students remember you. But many teachers rush through the end of class, something that is totally within your responsibility and your control as the teacher. A thoughtful, consistent closing ritual is essential to an effective class. Now, just like with openings, your class closing should have a clear structure. Here are the key elements to consider. First, physical completion. This means transitioning mindfully from the active portion of class to more restful postures. In most traditions, it includes some form of final relaxation, shavasana in many styles, or seated meditation or other resting poses. Second, the end of class offers mental and emotional integration. This involves guiding students to notice the effects of their practice, perhaps through a brief body scan or moment of reflection. Third, it gives a clear signal that class is ending. This might be a sound like a bell or chime, or a ritually repeated set of instructions or poems, or anything that feels conclusive and logical for you. Finally, the end of class moves through some practical logistics. This includes any information you need to convey about where to stow the props, or upcoming classes, or other details that students need as they leave. These elements don't always need to appear in this exact order, but including all of them helps create a sense of completion and care. Let's talk specifically about final relaxation, which in many classes means shavasana. This isn't just a nice bonus at the end of class. It's physiologically essential. During active practice, we're engaging the sympathetic nervous system, and we're applying stress intentionally to our students' bodies. Well, we're not applying it. Your students are applying the stress to their bodies. But there's intentional application of stress to encourage change. In final relaxation, we allow the parasympathetic nervous system to take over, which promotes recovery and integration. You need stress to grow, but you need recovery and rest in order to actually adapt to the stresses that you've put on. I've noticed a trend in some fitness-oriented yoga classes to minimize or even skip final relaxation, and I think this is a disservice to students. Even in a vigorous class, even with time constraints, I believe students deserve at least 3 to 5 minutes of quiet rest. This doesn't mean you need a 10-minute shavasana in every class. The length should be proportional to the intensity and duration of the active practice. So a 90-minute vigorous class might warrant 8 to 10 minutes of Shavasana, while a 45-minute gentle class might need only 5 minutes. Both of these examples come near a 10-to-1 ratio, where for every 10 minutes of total class time, the final relaxation amounts to 1 minute. So if you're teaching a 60-minute class, aim for at least 6 minutes of quiet relaxation at the end. If you are teaching in a setting with really strict time constraints, be clear about this up front. At the opening of class, you might say to your students, we'll have a brief final relaxation today, about 3 or 4 minutes before we close our practice. This sets their expectations appropriately so they don't feel disappointed when they don't get what they expected. How you guide final relaxation matters tremendously. Some teachers leave students in silence, which can be really powerful for experienced practitioners, but can be really disorienting for beginners. That was sure my experience in my first ever yoga class, where I had no idea what was going on during Shavasana. At the other end of the spectrum, some teachers talk continuously throughout final relaxation, which can prevent students from finding their own experience of stillness and make them too dependent on the teacher. I suggest a middle path. Guide students into the posture with clear instructions, offer a brief body scan or visualization to help them settle, and then allow a period of silence. Return with a chime, which you can preview before you stop talking. Like say, when it's time to come out, I'll hear this sound. Between now and then, there's nothing you need to do or make happen. You can bring students back with a chime that you can preview before you stop talking. I have a can chime. It sounds like a wind chime, and I will shake it and say, before I talk you out, I will play this chime, and until you hear this chime again, there's nothing else you need to do and nothing you need to make happen. Or you can talk students around with your voice as the time draws to a close, guiding students gradually back to awareness. Your language during this time should be soft but clear. Notice your pacing. Some teachers speak too quickly in final relaxation. It's good to slow down and allow pauses between phrases. This communicates to your students' nervous systems that it's truly safe to let go. Here's a simple template for guiding students into Shavasana. I invite you to find a comfortable position for final relaxation. You might lie on your back with your arms beside you, palms facing up, or you might prefer to lie on your side, or even remain seated if that's more comfortable for your body today. You could lean your back against the wall. Take a moment to make any final adjustments so you can be completely at ease. It's worth finding just the exact right sweet spot, emphasizing quality over quantity. And as you settle, you may need to shift again. Allow your body to become heavy, releasing completely into the support of the floor beneath you. With each exhale, you might sense yourself sinking a little deeper, letting go of any unnecessary tension or holding, using effort only where it's needed, which is probably almost nowhere. See, there are gradual pauses that keep coming in longer. You might give a little bit more cueing about the breath and then leave students to their own devices. Then you would play your chime and start to talk them back around. Gradually begin to deepen your breath slightly. Invite some gentle movement back into your body. As you feel the energy of these deeper, longer breaths come in, respond to them with movement. You give a little pause. When you're ready, consider rolling to one side. Take a few breaths on your side. Another little pause. Now slowly press your way up to sitting for our closing moments together. The transition out of final relaxation requires as much care as the transition in. Rushing your students back up to sitting can undo the benefits of the relaxation and leave them feeling disoriented or hurried. I recommend giving clear sequential cues, first deepening the breath, then adding small movements like fingers and toes, then bigger stretches, and finally changing positions. Always include the option to remain in relaxation if needed. Not everyone processes at the same rate. For students who tend to fall asleep, and we've all had them, you might gently increase the volume of your voice slightly as you guide them back, or use your small chime or a bell as an auditory signal that it's time to transition. And if they're still asleep, let them lie there. If they're still down for the count once class is packing up, you can go over and play your chime again or quietly talk them out. When you're guiding your students to a seated position for closing, invite them to find a comfortable seat rather than specifying particular posture. I usually say something like, make your way up to a seat, on or off any prop that's handy. We'll be here for just a few moments. Your legs could be straight or crossed, however you like. Make sure that you allow for some individual timing to get there and individual preference for what the seat looks like. Once your students have returned to seated position, or whatever position you've chosen for the very end of class, you have a precious opportunity to solidify the experience of your class, to be a memorable teacher, to leave your students feeling calm, collected, unified. And this is when your role as a guide is most important. You're helping your students bridge the gap from their practice, this magic spot of their practice, back to their daily life. Some teachers like to offer a closing thought. If you used a theme, this is your chance to tie it up with a conclusion, or read a poem, or give some kind of brief reflection that connects to the theme of the class. Other teachers like to guide a moment of gratitude or dedication of the practice. I do that. Some use a simple bow or a moment of silence or other gestures to mark the transition. Whatever approach resonates with you, keep it authentic and keep it consistent. Students appreciate knowing what to expect, and a familiar closing ritual helps them process the end of class. I'd like to share a note here about the word namaste that many Western yoga teachers use to close class. In India, namaste is actually used as a greeting, mostly to elders or people to whom respect should be shown, not as a goodbye. I've personally moved away from using it to close my classes, as I believe we can convey the same meaning more directly. What I think we're really trying to express when we say namaste is something like, I see you fully, I acknowledge you, and I honor you. So why not just say that? After all, being seen is fundamental to why people come to group classes in the first place. They could practice at home with a video, but they come to class to be part of a community, to be witnessed in their practice. I personally like to acknowledge the collective experience of being in class with others while also honoring individual journeys. So I might say something like, take a moment for individual dedication of your practice. Now gently open your eyes and use your peripheral vision to recognize that we practiced in community. Thanks for showing up for yourselves and for each other. There's great power in community, and I am so glad to have you in ours. Then I offer a simple bow. Beyond the philosophical and experiential aspects of closing class, there are some practical matters to address. First, timing. One of the biggest challenges for new teachers is managing time effectively so that the closing doesn't feel rushed. You almost couldn't start your wind down too soon. You could try setting a silent timer, like a vibrating watch, your Apple Watch, to alert you about 10 or 12 minutes before the scheduled end of class. This gives you time to begin winding down the active practice and transition to closing sequences and final relaxation. Second, props and materials. If your students use props, make sure you clearly explain how and where they should be returned. This is especially important if you're teaching in a setting where there are specific protocols for cleaning or for storing props. It's kind to mention to your students that if they're in a hurry, you can handle their props for them. Third, you might mention what happens next. Students often appreciate knowing about upcoming classes or events. A brief mention, like I'll be teaching again on Thursday at 6 p.m. and I'd love to see you there, that creates continuity. Just keep these announcements brief and save them for after the formal closing of practice. If students typically have questions after class, position yourself in a spot where you're accessible to them, where your body language invites them to speak to you, but you're not blocking the exit. This allows your students who need to leave in a hurry to do so while making you available to those who want to connect. Here are some common mistakes teachers make when ending class, some don'ts. First, the disappearing teacher. I think this happens when you're feeling uncomfortable. Some teachers guide students to final relaxation and then immediately start fussing with music or checking their phone or even leaving the room while students are relaxing. Stay present with your students throughout the entire experience, including final relaxation. You really need to just sit there. Don't touch your phone. Don't close your eyes and do not lie down yourself. Watch your students gently without staring them down. You will notice a few of them lift their heads, open their eyes, and check to see that you're there. Second, don't rush the ending. When teachers realize they're running out of time, they often cut final relaxation short or rush through closing rituals. And this undermines the benefits of the practice. Think ahead, modify your active sequence earlier on if time is tight. Third, on the other hand, beware the endless ending. So on the flip side, some teachers struggle to bring closure to class. They extend Shavasana without clear purpose, or they add multiple closing elements that dilute the impact that you could be delivering at the end of class. Be intentional and be precise. Just as with openings, your closing should be adapted to your audience and the setting. For beginners, offer more guidance and more explanation. Make the process explicit. So you would say something like, now we're moving into our final relaxation, which gives your body a chance to integrate all the work we've done today. You would explain that it's going to be quiet or that you're going to guide some kind of relaxation. Tell your students what to expect. That way you are setting their expectations and then immediately fulfilling their expectations, which makes them feel satisfied. For experienced practitioners, you might use more subtle cues and allow more silence during final relaxation. In corporate or workplace classes, acknowledge the transition back out into work mode. You might include a brief meditation on carrying mindfulness back into the remainder of your students' workday. For classes in non-traditional settings, like outside in a park or like when I'm teaching athletes in a gym or the field house, it's helpful to modify your closing to account for some environmental factors that might be outside of your control, like the temperature or the lighting, including the sun if you're outside, while preserving the essence of offering completion and then transition back. So for these outside classes, you may need to do a standing body scan instead of a reclining relaxation. And good practice for trauma-sensitive and every yoga class is to emphasize your students' choice and agency throughout the entire closing sequence, and be especially mindful about language during final relaxation. Eyes can stay open, for example. The specifics of how you end your class might vary, but the intention remains to provide a sense of conclusion and to help your students transition back to daily life while retaining the benefits of their practice. The way you close your class can transform a good yoga experience into a truly memorable one. A thoughtful, clear ending helps students integrate their practice. It creates a sense of completion, and it leaves them feeling both satisfied with today's class and eager to return to the next class with you. Remember that how you end your class directly impacts how students remember the entire experience. Approach your closing with the same care and intention you bring to your opening and peak sequences, and it's like you're offering an especially fantastic dessert. Here's an affirmation to help you remember. A satisfying conclusion honors my students' journey. A satisfying conclusion honors my students' journey. I am interested to hear how you like to end your class and how that might have changed in the course of your teaching career. You can join the conversation about this in The Zone. It's my free community for yoga teachers at Comfort Zone Yoga, my virtual studio focused on teacher development. You'll find the link in the show notes. It's free to join, and we have a great time in there. I'm issuing monthly challenges, offering monthly live calls, and there's a place where we can connect and have discussion. You'll find the link in the show notes. I'm Sage Roundtree, and this is Yoga Teacher Confidential. See you next time.